Welcome back. We're very happy to have you with us. We're having it's a very beautiful late summer day, and we're continuing in the 24th week in Ordinary Time from Mark's Gospel with which probably a very familiar reading, and I'll have Amy read that reading right now.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Jesus and his disciples set out for the villages of Caesarea Philippi. Along the way, he asked his disciples, "Who do the people say that I am?" They said in reply, "John the Baptist, others Elijah, still others one of the prophets." And he asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter said to him in reply, "You are the Christ." Then he warned them not to tell anyone about him. He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer greatly and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and rise after 3 days. He spoke this openly. Then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. At this he turned around and said, looking at his disciples, rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan. You are thinking not as God does, but as human beings do." He summoned the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "Whoever wishes to come after me must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and that of the gospel will save it." The gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. So in the homily last weekend, and I don't think I mentioned it in the video or in the bulletin article, maybe I did, but we have Jesus from another place in Mark's Gospel saying, he's doing a great healing of somebody, and then saying, okay, don't tell anybody, and then it proceeds to say that they didn't listen to him and they told everybody. This device is used in predominantly in Mark's Gospel, but elsewhere, and it's always called like the secret, sometimes, shh, don't tell anybody. And one of the suggestions I made, and I think it's a pretty good one, is that whenever you hear that, it's a reminder to us that the greater miracle is yet to come. It's the reader's way of saying, wait, there's something better coming even than this. So these extraordinary miracles and everything he does, he always does with this idea that something else is coming. And that something else, if we can spoil it for you, is the cross itself. Is to say that the cross is coming, and in the cross is the greatest of all of the signs. And some of you might say, well, I don't know about that. No, it's pretty clear theologically, because John will pick up from this and say, oh, glorify me, Lord. And when he talks about glorify me, he's talking about the cross. And he goes, when I am lifted up, all will be drawn to me. And that's from John's Gospel, which really picks beautifully up from where Mark's leaves off. So it's not it's not something I'm making up. That's something that we understand to be really central to the gospel, is that it all leads towards the cross. I was very happy because I mentioned that in the homily, not even thinking that this was the next week's reading, that we're coming to that he mentions the cross in it. And he says to Peter, you have to deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow me. So it's this extraordinary thing where it's mentioned and yet last week without saying the cross or a cross. It's mentioned without even referencing it, by the way in which the writer of the gospel says this secret. No, the best is yet to come. He's trying to use that as a way, a device to build excitement so that we continue to pay attention to that. So in the gospel story, Jesus says, be quiet, so that we understand that there's something even greater than this that's coming. In John's Gospel also, he picks this up when he says to Nathanael, you'll see greater things. And that's right in the first chapter. Jesus meets Nathanael, and then he sees him under the fig tree, and he goes, you're the Son of God. And he goes, you think this just because I recognize you under the fig tree? You're going to see something more than this. You're going to see heaven and earth come together. And it's a really lovely scene in John's Gospel. So this way, and whenever we tell stories, the great storytellers will always do it in a way that builds tension. Great teachers do that in their classroom. They lead it towards something else. And they kind of do things to build interest in the topic so that along the way we don't lose sight of it. And we don't forget or we don't mistake one of the little miracles for the greatest of all of the miracles. And none of these miracles are little, but I hope you understand what I'm saying. He's trying to lead us to a greater thing. So here he mentions the cross. You have to pick up the cross. You have to deny yourself. You have to follow me. You have to pick up that cross. And the reason he says we have to pick up the cross, and you'll know this when I describe this to you, because many of you have felt this before, is because the cross is the greatest of all the signs, because it reveals that God is love. And in giving his life, he gives us life. That is the greatest of all of these signs, the cross itself. And we come up on the exaltation of the cross very soon too, which is that great feast day when we say in the exaltation of the cross, God is love. Look what he's done for us. Look what he's offered for us. And we remember that, and we do our best to remember that in our lives. But the way in which we understand this is that when we love somebody, if they hurt, we hurt. We know this feeling. When we love, if they hurt, we hurt. If somebody comes in and you care about them and they're not their best self, or something's wrong, or they've been in an accident, or they're sick, we're less too. And that is just the way love works in our world. So Jesus saying, pick your cross up, is the same as saying, do not refuse to love. And in fact, pick up your cross is probably a better way of saying it, because it doesn't sugarcoat it at all, that when you love somebody, you hurt for them and with them as they journey. We have this amazing word, the passion. Passion of Jesus reflects to his pain and suffering leading up to his death. Passion is also used for a feeling of ardent, strong love. And we know that, and it would be a little myopic of us to say, oh, that feeling of strong love that we have it's so strong it hurts sometimes. That's too simplistic. It's also that when you love, you hurt additionally, because it's not only your own self that you're worried about, but it's you worry about the other maybe even more than yourself. That is a long conversation for us that we could look at, and over the next, you could spend a lifetime reflecting on that alone. But the other thing to mention in this reading is also the beginning, the questions that Jesus asks. He says to his disciples, who do the people say that I am? And then he says, who do you say that I am? Now, Fulton Sheen, in two places in his catechism series, mentions polling data. And if it's only one place, he should have mentioned it in two. One is when Peter is walking on the water and he remembers that it's not possible to walk on water and starts to sink. He takes his eyes off of the Lord. The other one is here. Because another way Jesus would ask this if it were happening today was, what does the polling data say about who I am? What does the conventional wisdom say about who I am? Who do the people say that I am? He's asking them a soft, easy question. And they respond excitedly. Some say Elijah, some say Jeremiah, or one of the other great prophets. And these are great things, and they're excited. And then when he says, who do you say that I am? You can almost feel it in the text that they go silent. The smiles and the laughter and the excitement leaves them. Because to them, and it had probably just started, sprouting in their minds or growing in their minds, that this is greater than the prophets even. And Peter is the one alone who can say, you are the Son of the living God. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And I believe, is it in here, Amy, where it says, flesh and blood have not revealed this, or is that in Matthew's version?
That's not in this one.
Okay. So in Matthew's version, I think he even says, Jesus responds to him by saying, flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but it comes to you from my Father in heaven. But in here, it's enough for us to say that Peter is alone the one to have the courage to say what he was thinking. In the bulletin article and preaching, I don't know where it'll go this weekend, but keep that in mind, because that's an extraordinary thing. Sometimes we get it wrong in our lives because we're asking the right question. We're asking the wrong question. So I might say, you know what, I'm safe. I'm going to be safe. I'm going to stick with the polling data. I'm going to stick with conventional wisdom and just behave that way. But that's not the important question that Jesus asks us. He says, beyond the polling data, you know who I am. Will one of you say it? Who do you say that I am? And Peter alone of that group had the courage to say it. So, number one, do we proclaim in our life together that Jesus Christ is Lord, that He is Christ, that He is the Son, with the same courage that Peter did? When maybe it's not unpopular. We don't have to scream it from the mountaintops, but do we act in a way that we are people who know that our friend Jesus Christ is also Lord of heaven and earth? Or do we simply abdicate all of that wonderful goodness and stick with what's safe? We make a lot of decisions for good or for ill based on polling data. And I'm not convinced that it's always the best way to act. Sometimes it leads to unbelief, even when it's Catholic bishops doing polls and doing the polls, or Catholic agencies and societies and stuff doing the polls. Because the much more important thing is, who do you say that I am? You know me. Who do you say that I am? So don't abdicate in favor of what's safe, what you know to be true. And what do we know to be true? We know that Jesus Christ is Lord. We know that He's the Christ, the Son of the living God. And we know that He told us the most important thing we can do is to love one another as I have loved you. And in this reading itself, to pick our cross up and follow Him. So, if you know that, you know pretty much everything about the faith. And if you know everything about the faith but that, you don't know anything. Because we're not really Christian people. And that was actually Francis's first homily as Pope, I believe, where he said, we might be bishops, we might be nuns, we might be sisters or lay people, we might be popes and priests and deacons, but if we're not talking about the cross, we're not Christians. And it's much more important for us to keep those things all together. My being a priest has nothing to do with what I think about being a priest. It has everything to do with the priesthood that was established by Jesus Christ, who is the high priest, and in whose life we participate in the sacramental life. Our baptism makes us priest, prophet, and king. We participate in that life by virtue of our baptism. And we say thank you to God who calls us to that. But it always comes with that cross. And it always comes with that challenge to us, not only to be safe and do what is just okay for us to do based on the polls, but to do what is right, what is Catholic, what is Christian. So take that with you there for the end of, I was going to say the end of summer, but I'll see you one more time before the end of summer, I think. So, and the Bills won, so we're all excited, and Baltimore lost. Amy, I'm sorry.
Barely.
Yeah, barely, yeah. And but I have Lamar Jackson on my fantasy league, so I got a lot of points from him, so we're happy about that. But and hopefully he's not hurt, but he didn't practice today. All right, we wrapped up my fantasy football podcast at this point, along with this gospel reflection, and we look forward to seeing you next week as well. Thank you.